They say a mother's hug is a sanctuary, but what happens when that haven mutates into a prison of mental torture? Today, the public didn't merely watch a case, they watched the brutal roasting of a daughter's spirit. While Tina Campbell, the mogul who cashed in on religion and kin, sat paralyzed in court, her own pride and joy, Laiah Simone, took the stand to drop a bomb so foul, it turned that room into a morgue of dead hopes. The vibes turned lethal as that first tape leaked. This wasn't the gospel icon we loved. This was a mother's tone, sharp as a blade, shredding her child's self-esteem while the film wasn't rolling. But the real kicker, the blade that gutted every fan watching, was Laiah Simone's claim that her mother methodically brainwashed her against her own father, using a child's purity to feed a craving for total dominance. As the audio blasted, the halo didn't just slip, it exploded. Look at those leaks escaping Tina Campbell's eyes. Is that actual mommy guilt? Or just the frantic panic that the world finally caught the monster behind the mic? Buckle up, because what you're about to digest isn't just some legal drama, it's a cry for sanity that stayed ignored for 19 long years. This is a deep dive into the opening act of this disaster. The vibe is gritty, soaked in drama, and time to keep every viewer glued to every syllable. The room was silent, but the air smelled like the rot of a dying career. For decades, Tina Campbell acted as a queen of grit, a holy voice, and a parent who supposedly kept it together. We streamed her shows, we sang her hits, and we swallowed the lie of the perfect, if spicy, church lady. But as the heavy courtroom doors slammed shut, that image didn't just dent, it vaporized. Laiah Simone, the girl who spent 19 years suffocating in a legend's shadow, marched toward the witness box. Her steps were tiny, but the trauma she experienced was massive. She wasn't just there to talk. She was there to snatch back a life that was edited, micromanaged, and frankly, broken by the woman who birthed her. The dragging started not with a yell, but with a tape that froze the blood of every single spectator. Picture the drama. Tina Campbell, parked in the hot seat, her face a mask of fake chill. That mask cracked the second the first audio file hit the courtroom speakers. This wasn't the sound of a mentor or a savior. It was a voice dripping with a cold, savage malice. In these clips, caught in the safety of their private house, we hear Tina Campbell allegedly trashing Laiah Simone, using insults that no kid should ever have to hear. The verbal beating was constant. It drew a map of a home where love was a bribe, and where Laiah Simone's value was only based on her ability to stay quiet for her mother's public scam. As the tape ran, Laiah Simone sat with her head down, her body shaking with quiet tears. For the fans watching the leaked clips and the folks sitting on those hard benches, the shock was massive. We were hearing the sound of a childhood being hijacked in real time. Laiah Simone spoke through the pain, explaining that for years, she existed in a state of constant horror. Horror of the rages, horror of the mind games, and a massive horror of the Tina Campbell brand. She told of a life where the reality TV crew was a relief because, at least then, there was a script to follow. But when the light went out, the real horror started. A horror of mental isolation where she was branded the mess, the weight, and the cause of the family's drama. But as nasty as the verbal hits were, it was merely the teaser. The gallery gasped as Laiah Simone pivoted into the most toxic part of her story, the planned hit on her bond with her dad, Teddy Campbell. This is where the plot turns from a messy mother-daughter fight into something way more wicked. Laiah Simone alleged that Tina Campbell started a multi-year plot of parental alienation. She swore her mother served her a daily dose of lies, framing Teddy Campbell as a thug, a guy who hated her, and someone who was lethal to be near. I was brainwashed to loathe the only human who was trying to rescue me, Laiah Simone sobbed into the mic, her voice snapping under the weight. She exposed that Tina Campbell allegedly faked stories of abuse and neglect to make sure that Laiah Simone would never call her father for help. It was a pro-level isolation play. By hacking off her daughter's link to her dad, Tina Campbell made sure she was the only god left in Laiah Simone's world. It wasn't about saving the kid, according to The Stand. It was about holding an absolute monopoly on power. Tina Campbell's meltdown in court was a whole movie. As the dirt on the father fraud hit the light, the singer didn't just sniffle, she folded. It was a raw, noisy wreck that made the judge call for a quick break. But the question buzzing in the air was instant. Were these the sobs of a mom seeing the hurt she caused, or the panicky tears of a star watching her wealth turn to dirt? The web has already flipped into a state of total war. On one side, stands claim that we are only seeing a slice of a messy family vibe, hinting that Tina Campbell is being unfairly dragged for being a firm parent. But the massive bulk of the fans is shook. The proof, the raw, gritty audio of Tina Campbell's voice, is impossible to ignore. Social feeds are drowning in the hashtag Justice for Laiah, as fans from all over the planet react to the horror of a girl who had to spy on her own mom just to be trusted. As we wrap this first slice of the mess, we are left with a spooky sight. A daughter finally finding her mic, and a mother finally losing her stage. The throne has been flipped over, and what sits underneath is a tale of pain that no amount of church songs can fix. The drama is far from done, and the tapes yet to be aired are rumored to be even more lethal. Stay tuned, because the deeper we dig into this case, the more we see that the Tina Campbell we thought we knew never existed at all. The truth isn't just leaking, it's screaming. The atmosphere in the courtroom during the second hour of testimony shifted from shock to a heavy, suffocating realization. If part 1 was about the cracks in the foundation, part 2 was the total collapse of the house. As Laiah Simone continued to speak, she moved away from the general atmosphere of her home and began detailing specific, calculated instances of what experts call emotional gaslighting. She described a life where her memories were constantly challenged by her mother, where her own feelings were treated as inconveniences, and where the truth was whatever Tina Campbell decided it was that day. The most harrowing revelation came when the court examined a series of text messages and private emails spanning 3 years. These weren't just angry exchanges, they were strategic. Laiah explained that every time she tried to reconcile with her father, Teddy, or even express a desire to spend time with him, the punishment would begin. This punishment wasn't physical, but psychological. Tina would allegedly withdraw all affection, label Laiah as disloyal to the family brand, and use her religious influence to tell her daughter that she was disobeying a higher power by questioning her mother's authority. The courtroom sat in stunned silence as Laiah detailed how her mother used faith as a weapon, turning spiritual guidance into a tool for absolute domestic control. "I felt like I was drowning in a glass of water," Laiah told the judge, her voice now a hollowed-out version of the girl we saw on reality TV. "Every time I reached for the surface, every time I reached for my dad, the glass got taller." She described the father deception in even more agonizing detail. It wasn't just about lies, it was about the fabrication of fear. Tina had allegedly convinced Laiah that her father's absence was a choice of cold indifference, when in reality, Teddy was being blocked at every turn. The court was presented with evidence suggesting that Tina had intercepted letters and blocked phone numbers, all while telling Laiah, "See? He didn't even call for your birthday." This level of manipulation left the gallery gasping. It was a cold-blooded assassination of a father's character, executed by the person Laiah was supposed to trust most. As these details emerged, the visual in the courtroom was unforgettable. Tina Campbell, usually the master of the microphone, was reduced to a trembling figure in the defendant's chair. She wasn't just weeping anymore. She was shaking, her hands gripping the edge of the table, so hard her knuckles turned white. When the prosecution played a video clip of Tina from a past interview, where she sat on a plush sofa talking about healing and forgiveness, the irony was sickening. The contrast between the woman on the screen and the voice in the secret recordings was like night and day. The public was seeing the mirror image, a dark, distorted version of a celebrity who had spent years selling a dream while her daughter lived a nightmare. The impact on the public has been a tidal wave of outrage. Psychologists and family advocates have started appearing on news segments, using this case as a textbook example of high-conflict parenting. The divide on social media has narrowed. The Tina defenders are becoming quieter as the evidence becomes louder. People are no longer just talking about a celebrity scandal. They are talking about the long-term effects of childhood trauma and the bravery it takes to stand up to a powerful parent in the public eye. The hashtag the cost of the brand has started trending, with former fans burning their concert tickets and deleting her music, unable to separate the art from the alleged abuse. But perhaps the most heartbreaking part of part 2 was Laiah's description of her stolen years. She talked about the milestones she couldn't enjoy because she was too busy managing her mother's moods. The graduations, the birthdays, the quiet moments of teenage life, all of them were overshadowed by the need to protect the Tina Campbell image. "I wasn't a daughter," Laiah whispered, looking directly at her mother for the first time in the trial. "I was a prop. I was a supporting character in the story of your life, but I never got to have a life of my own." As the day's proceedings came to a close, the judge ordered all remaining audio evidence to be transcribed for the final phase of the testimony. The world is now waiting on edge for the final blow. If the first two parts of this testimony have been this explosive, the conclusion promises to be a reckoning that will change the landscape of celebrity culture forever. The gospel queen has lost her crown, and in its place is a crown of thorns worn by the daughter who finally refused to be silent. The silence of the courtroom at the end of the day said more than any song ever could. The truth has arrived, and it is in black and white. It is raw, it is bloody, and it is finally out. The third and final day of testimony didn't just feel like a legal proceeding. It felt like a funeral for a legacy. If the previous days were about the lies and the recordings, Part 3 was about the devastating aftermath, the wreckage of a soul that had been dismantled piece by piece. As Laiah Simone took the stand for the final time, the courtroom was packed to capacity, the air thick with attention, so sharp it felt like it could draw blood. This was the moment of the final reckoning, where the last of the gospel queen's secrets would be dragged into the light of day. The focus shifted to the grand illusion, how Tina Campbell allegedly used her massive platform and the power of the church to keep Laiah in a state of spiritual and emotional imprisonment. Laiah revealed that the manipulation went far beyond the walls of their home. Every time she considered speaking out or seeking help, she was reminded of the brand. She was told that her voice would destroy the livelihood of dozens of employees, that her rebellion would be a sin against the very fans who looked up to their family as a beacon of light. Tina didn't just control Laiah's home life. She had successfully convinced her daughter that her own truth was a weapon of mass destruction. But the most soul-crushing evidence was saved for the end. The prosecution introduced a final piece of evidence, a series of private journals Laiah had kept hidden under her floorboards for 5 years. In these pages, the court saw the raw, unfiltered dissent of a child losing her mind. "I don't know who is real anymore," one entry read. "The mother who smiles on TV, or the mother who tells me I'm nothing when the red light goes off." Laiah's testimony turned to the psychological toll of the father deception. She described the moment she finally reconnected with Teddy in secret, only to realize that the man she had been taught to fear was actually a man who had been grieving for his daughter in silence. The courtroom wept as Laiah described their first real conversation, a conversation where years of lies melted away in minutes. "The hardest part wasn't finding out my mom lied," Laiah said, her voice dropping to a haunting whisper. "The hardest part was realizing I had spent half my life hating a man who was my only true ally." At this moment, Tina Campbell buried her face in her hands, her sobs finally breaking through the silence of the room. But there was no comfort to be found. The gallery remained cold. The public had seen enough. The perfect mother was gone, replaced by a strategist who had traded her daughter's mental health for a polished public narrative. As the testimony concluded, the impact on the world outside was seismic. This wasn't just a celebrity scandal anymore. It was a cultural tipping point. The Tina Campbell breakdown became a symbol of the dangers of performing perfection. The public's reaction shifted from anger to a profound, collective sadness. Social media was no longer just divided. It was united in a mourning of what should have been. Fans who had once found strength in Tina's music now found themselves unable to listen to her voice without hearing the jagged edges of the secret recordings. The industry response was swift. Sponsorships were pulled, tour dates were canceled, and the Mary Mary legacy was put on indefinite ice. In her closing statement to the court, Laiah Simone didn't ask for money, and she didn't ask for a public apology. She asked for the end. She asked for the right to exist outside of the Tina Campbell shadow. "For 19 years, I was a character in a story I didn't write," she said, looking straight into the eyes of her mother. "Today, I'm taking the pen back." The final image of the trial was one for the history books. Tina Campbell, once the loudest voice in any room, sat alone and speechless as her daughter walked out of the courtroom doors and into a world where she was finally, legally and emotionally free. The explosive testimony had done exactly what Laiah intended. It destroyed the lie so that the truth could finally breathe. The curtain has fallen on the gospel queen, and as the lights dim on this tragic chapter, we are left to wonder, how many other perfect families are hiding a scream that is just waiting to be heard. The trial is over, but for Laiah Simone, the life she was always meant to have is just beginning. The courtroom is empty, the cameras have been packed away, and the lights in the gallery have finally gone dark. But for Laiah Simone, the echoes of those recordings will remain for a lifetime. Today, we didn't just witness the downfall of a superstar, we witnessed the resurrection of a daughter's truth. It's a haunting reminder that the people we idolize on our screens are often the ones hiding the darkest shadows behind closed doors. Tina Campbell's empire may have been built on faith, but it was sustained by a silence that has finally been shattered. Now, I want to turn the mirror toward you. We have spent the last few minutes peeling back the layers of a family's most painful moments, but where do you stand? Do you believe that a mother's pressure can ever justify this level of manipulation? Or do you think that Laiah Simone's decision to air this dirty laundry in public was the only way she could truly save her own life? This story is far from over, and as the legal fallout continues to ripple through the industry, we will be here to bring you every update, every leaked tape, and every heartbreaking turn in this saga. If this story touched you, if it made you hold your own loved ones a little closer today, then please honor Laiah Simone's bravery by hitting that subscribe button and turning on the notification bell. Don't let this conversation end here. Drop a comment below with the word truth if you stand with Laiah Simone, or tell us your thoughts on Tina Campbell's breakdown. Your engagement helps us keep bringing these hidden stories to light. Thank you for watching, for listening, and for seeking the truth with us. We'll see you in the next investigation.